Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Round Table.
Spring arrives, and so does the sneezing. Everybody knows it, right? Pollen season hits harder, it seems, every single year, but it's not just nature doing its thing. The trees lining our streets could indeed be the problem. We'll look at how urban planning turned fresh air into a seasonal hazard and whether cities can ever really go green without making all of us miserable. We're live from our studios in Beijing. This is Roundtable. I'm Steve. Thank you very much for being with us today. And for the show, I'm with Fei Fei and Yushan. First up, every spring, every spring, just as the world starts to bloom, pollen also quietly, not so quietly, takes over the air, turning simple joys like taking a walk outside into a full-on survival challenge. Suddenly, everyone seems to be sneezing or rubbing their eyes and wondering why fresh air feels anything but fresh. But is all this pollen just a natural side effect of spring, something that maybe we can do nothing about, or something we've unintentionally engineered into our cities? From the trees we plant to the way our urban spaces are planned, there's a bigger story hiding behind all those tissues and allergy meds. And now people are starting to ask, hey, can we have a city that's green and comfortable to live in? Why does something so natural cause so much trouble? Fei Fei and Yushan, good afternoon to you. The number one sound that I'm hearing in the office these days is achoo.
Yeah, isn't that cute? Oh my.
It is allergy season for sure.
And for many people, that's not only about sneezing, it's also about all geared up to the goggles, to a somewhat snore-like equipment that protects your nose.
Yeah, or your neck, your hands, just covering as much skin as possible, right?
Yes, because many people, hands up if you have this kind of symptoms like sneezing, runny noses, dry and itchy eyes, and that's all caused by pollen. And right now, I just checked on the Beijing's weather app that according to their forecast, and today in the city of Beijing, they put Beijing, when it comes to pollen allergy, on a very high alert, the highest level right now. So that will continue for basically another week, till the end of this month.
I thought we hadn't gotten to the
peak.
Worst part yet, because I remember last spring was my first spring in Beijing, and all of a sudden it started to snow, or at least I thought it was snowing, but it wasn't. It was all these little seedlings from trees flying through the air. And when I say I thought it was snowing, that's legit how many of these seedlings are flying through the air. It looks like a blizzard.
Yeah.
But we haven't gotten there yet this year. Or is that not predicted this year and last year was an outlier, I wonder?
For last year, I think it's almost the first time, maybe because of the amplifying effect of the social media, that we start to seeing this pollen almost like a sandstorm on some level, that you have these yellow dusts flying into the air, and especially if a wind comes by or you tap on the tree and it's just exploded in front of your face.
Right.
And that snowfall, quote-unquote snowfall scene kind of happen like every spring here in Beijing. That's a very typical view, but sometimes earlier, sometimes later. And last year, I believe the spring hits a bit earlier than usual, and that it's usually the female trees, the female cypress trees in Beijing that's spreading out all the snows, while the male trees have more of a pollen sac where the pollen are released. That's the kind of different irritant to human skin and nose at this point of this year.
So the primary culprits behind these allergies, they say, are wind-pollinated plants, particularly those in what you just mentioned, Yushan, the cypress family, such as the Chinese cypress and the juniper. These are different from insect-pollinated flowers. These wind-pollinated varieties, they produce these little small, light, and dry pollen grains, and they fly through the air, and they're easily suspended in the air, too. It's almost like they're hanging there.
Because that's how they spread.
Yeah, exactly.
Wind pollinated. That's why they are called called wind pollinated. And also considering Beijing's weather is really, really dry. And for example, for last year in the year 2025, one of the reasons that we are seeing seems like we have an increasing amount of pollen is also because if you still remember in the year of 2024, Beijing didn't snow at all. So the weather is really, really extremely dry and making these pollen more easily to be suspended in the middle of the air.
I didn't realize that. So what happens in the winter before can have an influence on how bad the pollen is. We mentioned Beijing so far, but it's not just Beijing because the issue of pollen allergies has really resonated with people across almost the entire country.
True. If you look online, nowadays discussions about pollen allergies, especially on social media platforms, they're growing every day. Everybody seems to be taking part of it, either joining the discussion or sharing what kind of symptoms they're experiencing with new topics constantly emerging. So on social media platform Xiaohongshu, for example, contents related to pollen allergies has already surpassed 5 million views, while on Weibo, another social media platform, the hashtag National Pollen Forecast Guide has exceeded 3 million views. Interesting. I didn't know there's a forecast guide on a national scale.
Oh,
Yes.
people with serious...
Yeah.
That leads me to believe that you don't really suffer from any serious allergies.
Not really.
Because you don't pay attention to the forecast, right?
Not to that extent
Same
that got
here.
me. Yeah, right.
Yeah, same here. I don't... knocking on wood, I don't have any serious allergies yet in my life. So this time of year is not so uncomfortable for me, especially when I compare myself to those with allergies, serious allergies. I mean, this time of year can be torturous for some people. It can be really, really serious. And those people would be the ones that are following that forecast every 5 minutes, I'm sure.
But here's an interesting question for you, Fei Fei. For example, now that me and Steve, we say we don't really experience any of these allergic reactions, such as stuffed nose, running nose, or itchy eyes, or respiratory issues. Does that mean that we can skip these issues and this allergy once and for all?
Yeah, that's not the case. Actually, well, according to a lot of health experts, these kind of allergy symptoms can start to develop even though you are in your adulthood. Meaning they're like these inflammatory reactions in your immune system that they can build up every year. And if you stay in these kind of environment, that maybe someday in the future, they will reach to a level of triggering that allergy for you. So all of a sudden, if 1 year you start to have itchy nose or runny nose or itchy eyes, you would be, start to have suffer from these allergies. So, and also same with asthma as well, that I have friends and family members that start developing asthmas after exposed to air pollution.
Yeah.
So, you never know.
Never know.
You need to protect yourself even regardless.
Yeah.
Nasal issues, eye issues, respiratory issues. But let's talk about the trees. Beijing and many other cities, and by the way, this is not a Chinese issue. There are plenty of cities around the world that are dealing with this type of pollen problem. I'm going to talk about Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States a little bit later on. But talking about Beijing and the trees, the cypress ones, those are the guilty parties, right?
Yeah.
So why plant? And I think a lot of people ask this question, right? At first, I want to say this. If you've never been to Beijing, it is one of the greenest cities I have ever been to in my entire life. I feel like the city was built in a forest sometimes. There are trees everywhere. Big streets, small streets, back streets, you name it, there are trees there. Some big, some small, some look like they've been here for hundreds and hundreds of years, and I'm sure they probably have.
True.
But why plant so many of these cypress trees if we now know these cause such a huge problem?
Well, this actually has to be traced back in the days, back in the 1980s and 1990s when Beijing were really facing this massive greening campaign, but with limited economic resources. So back then, it's really a differentiation in priorities regarding city planning. So the planners, they want trees like the cypress, the poplar, and willow because they were affordable and also really resilient to the northern dryness in the soil and our climate. So yeah, you mentioned, Steve, that how green we're turning. Ever since decades ago, we started planting all of these trees, which rapidly increased the green coverage in Beijing from about 20% to nearly 50%. So that worked back then, according to the priority back then.
The Chinese cypress is described as a super warrior for urban environments.
And also they stay green throughout the year,
right.
like regardless winter or summers. And also one of the reasons is that this kind of cypress is a native species to the Beijing area. So it's natural that they pick this type of tree on their list when they're thinking about greening the urban space.
The cypress, too, it's native to Beijing, and it has a long history, and it represents, there's a cultural aspect to this, too, right? Because it represents certain things.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. If you look into old pictures of Beijing from late Qing dynasty, in the plain of Beijing, you don't really see a lot of trees. And all of these trees, they gather in imperial court, backyards, and parks, such as the Forbidden Cities Park. And then there is the Temple of Heaven. If you take a walk into Temple of Heaven, there are just cypress trees all over the place because they bear this symbol of longevity and eternity. And that was deeply believed back in the Qing dynasty as a good fortune, as a good sign for the imperial court. So you walk past a visually twisted old thick tree, and they each have a name tag. They write how many hundreds of years old they are. I bypass a 900-year-old tree, and the younger ones, quote unquote younger ones, are 100, 200 years old.
Yes.
So that's when this whole idea of planting cypress trees already existed, like all these long time ago, at least for the case of here in Beijing, and also combining with the greening campaigns a few decades ago. That's really a combination of cultural, societal, and also like urban planning reasons that we have so many cypress trees and these trees that cause pollens.
The Temple of Heaven, the Forbidden City, and the Summer Palace contain over 6,000 ancient cypress trees that are more than 100 years old. Thank you to the China Science Communication article for that information. Especially, I've been to all three, but the Temple of Heaven is where I noticed the most because there's a long walk in the park before you actually get to the Temple of Heaven. And it's just, it's beautiful, right? It's just so beautiful. There's so many old trees there.
Yeah, and also that's the video in the year of 2025 that's got circulated online where they start to notice this dust flying in the air. That's exactly where it's filmed, the Temple of Heaven.
If you look closely at the photos from the Qing dynasty, you can see everyone is just about to sneeze. The cypress is not the only culprit here. There are other trees too, right, around, but I think that's the one that tends to get the most attention. There's also poplar trees that are planted a lot, willow trees, and it was all done for economic reasons. Yushan, I think you mentioned it, right? They were hardy, they were affordable, and it allowed the city, Beijing, to rapidly increase its green coverage from 20% to nearly 50%, which is really, really impressive. Now, that being said, what aspects of, the planning that's going on currently, talking about the design of the city, how is it being addressed now that everyone's complaining about their allergies?
Well, I think first of all is that it's not really possible to cut them out at the current stage, because it would be costly. And also when we're talking about the ancient trees, we can't also cut down ancient trees, been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. But what we can do instead, for example, in the city of Beijing, they have like different methods to sort of trap these pollens from exposing them to the air. For example, we're talking about Beijing is really dry, and that's one of the reasons this pollen got suspended in the air. And what the city government is trying to do is increasing that moisture level in the air by bringing water to the tree, by cleaning the streets. You can see that the sort of trucks cleaning the streets all the time in
Yes.
Beijing, and that's also helping with, reducing the pollen in the air.
Yeah, you'll see the trucks maybe around, I don't know, 11 p.m. or 10 p.m., maybe a little bit, and sometimes even later, actually,
Yeah.
into the middle of the night. They go around and they've got their sweeper things attached to the truck, and they spray water too, and that's to get rid of the dust on the streets to try to alleviate the problem a little bit.
Yeah.
And on the policy maker's side, there's also provision in the recently adopted code, namely the Ecological and Environmental Code, which states that urban and rural greening should be adapted to local conditions with scientifically selected tree and plant species, along with strengthened monitoring and evaluation in order to meet the needs of health, safety, and livability. Meaning that nowadays our priority shifts from how do we make the city look more green to the part that how do we make everybody in here suffer less from the air.
Yeah. So that priority shifts from, we need to make the city as green as fast as possible to, because we've reached to that level at this point, but now we are thinking about exchanging or replacing some of the trees to other varieties. And also that's more prettier on some level to look at.
There was a comment from, I believe, a doctor who specializes in cardiovascular medicine, and she said that many patients with allergy symptoms during spring and autumn visit the hospital, and in her view, is it autumn? I didn't realize autumn was bad for... See, again, I don't know much because this doesn't really affect me too much. I should knock on wood again. It doesn't affect me too much, so I wasn't aware that autumn was also a time for allergies.
In recent years, yes, especially in northern regions, like in Mongolia, there used to be a very famous allergy sort of outbreak a few years back. That's also caused by another type of species of trees greening the deserts back in the days. So you can see the problem is sort of increasing and expanding here in China, and that's why I think that doctor said even though the past approaches to desert control and tree planting,
The ones along the side of the road.
yes, sometimes they're not really that well planned in the past. Also, one of the reasons is because of the limitation of knowledge that we had in the past, and then also because of all different kind of resources, for example, financial resources we have.
That's another beautiful thing about Beijing. I guess I didn't give this detail before. When I said there are a lot of trees, maybe that would lead you to believe that, there are a lot of parks and those trees must be in the parks. And yes, that is true, but for the major streets and the side streets as well, the smaller streets in Beijing, trees line those streets. And it's so pretty at night on big streets because the street lights are on and the lights kind of shine through the leaves of the trees, and sometimes they'll have lights or lamps at the bottom, at the trunk of the tree that shine upward, and it's just a really pretty scene.
For some people.
That has different side effects as well, I guess.
What I see from this is like a transitioning of mindset too, because for years, the way I grew up, I get used to hearing my mom saying all the time that, it's springtime again. My nose is itchy. I'd better take this pill. I'd better take that squeezing in kind of medicine. In the old days, in the past 1 to 2 decades, people see it as, it's my body's reaction towards the environment. But now we are actively trying to make the environment more tolerant and more suitable for people. So it's not really your body not adjusting to it.
Yeah.
It's that a lot of people are having similar issues as you are.
It's true, and that's why it's become such a hot issue on social media as well. So now cities are trying to fix this this problem through different styles of urban planning, and one of the things that they mention is that there's kind of a new rule book for green space.
Yes, because when it comes to urban planning, they always have this sort of a catalog about what kind of plants are recommended to be planted in the cities. In the past, of course, cypress are on the list. And now I think they've sort of are recommending controlling the use of these kind of highly allergenic plants like cypress. And I think I heard one expert talking about they're thinking about replacing cypress with another type of flowery tree called pearl bush. That can be one of the replacement. So you can see that maybe in the future, when we're talking about greening Beijing, planting new trees or replacing old or thick ones, cypress won't be on one of the options anymore. And also I think the scientists are also monitoring and tracking and basically have a population survey about how many of these cypress or willow trees that we have in the city. That's the number one issue that we need to think about when we're talking about control these allergies or helping people mitigating these allergies in the first place. And I think they found that at least within Beijing's Fifth Ring Road, which is basically the major downtown area of the city, we have 168,000 of cypresses.
Just in that area
Nowhere
alone.
to escape.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's almost like a pollen map. Then, isn't it, for the city planners? Because if they are aware of which trees are causing the most damage, allergy-wise, then they can come up with a plan to try to send out more cleaning crews, I think, is one of the measures in those areas that are most highly affected.
And when it comes to practical or rather physical control, actually people start to act on how to better control it since at the end of last year. So that's in order to reduce pollen at the resource. Beijing actually started these physical control measures early as far back as in winter 2025 in districts such as Haidian in northern Beijing, and which already began pruning male juniper branches based on how the trees grow. So what they do is, this is also practiced in the major parks where these trees are gathered. For example, the Ditan Park, where the staff use lifts to trim the yellowing pollen-heavy branches, and also they use high-pressure water spray to wash down the tree so that the pollen kinds of just falls down to the ground too. So as the deputy director of the Ditan Park says, Liu Yang, this person explained, even on the same tree, the pollen matures at different times. So for them, during allergy season, washing the tree, they call it, has to be done every day. So that's something that the parks are actively engaged into these days, especially in recent years, that they cut the irritants from its source.
Yeah, you need more people to do that, and they have more people to do it as well. Experts call them human wave tactics.
There's also sending cleaners out, spraying water to the tree. I think they need to spray the waters onto the trees at least 3 to 5 times a day, and that can be very costly. We need a lot of water in first place, and also we need to pay these cleaners to do that job. And so that's why scientists are also working at bio-based sort of control agents that can be mixed into the water so that they can be more effective when it comes to, calming this pollen down than just water. Is said to be about 20 times more effective at making the pollen drops to the ground compared with water. And also you only need to spray the agent once a day instead of 5 or 3 or 5 times.
Yeah, but I mean, once a day for 168,000 trees only within the Fifth Ring Road area.
That's still
not the entire city. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of manpower. Another thing that they're using to their advantage, they call it a joint defense team. And this allows for better communication between different government branches and the parks departments. Now they're working together on, again, what they call the joint defense team or control mechanism. They use weather, they use health, and they use city management departments as well. So their strategy there is it allows the city to treat pollen almost like it's a weather event, like a storm is coming, for example. Something that can be forecasted and something that can be managed in real time.
And it really benefits park visitors like us because we can now check the pollen prediction in a way on mini programs or on Weather Beijing, like these apps and softwares to really get hourly updates on just how high is the pollen level if I decide to go out and visit a certain park area in Beijing. So really it creates such a difference for visitors of parks, especially during this springtime when people go out as families and we just want to stay safe a little bit more.
Yeah. So now you can check mini programs, right? On your phone. You can get updates there about what's going on pollen-wise within the city. Because again, we're kind of treating this like a light issue here today, but for many, many people, this is a really terrible, terrible time of year.
Yeah, so for especially those suffering from severe symptoms from allergies, maybe they can, when they have this kind of forecasting services, they're able to decide when is the best time to go out and experience springs, and when is the best to stay indoors and avoid going out, or put on your gears, put on your goggles, your masks, your scarves, and avoid exposing yourself to this pollen season at the moment. And I think scientists said most of the time the peak hours for pollen is between 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah. I remember last year kind of giggling because you see people on scooters sometimes and they've got, even though the weather is warm outside, they've got their helmet on, they've got the goggles on, they've got a face mask on, they've got a neck mask on, they've got sleeves covering their from their elbows down to their wrists, and then their hands are covered too. And I was thinking, are they hiding from the police? Like, what are they doing?
No facial recognition.
Right. It's allergy season, and they are covering themselves up as best they can. So I want to share the story about, this is kind of interesting to me because I didn't realize how many cities around the world were actually dealing with a problem like this. And the one that I chose to share is Atlanta, Georgia in the United States. It's in the southeastern part of the United States. A beautiful place if you've never been before. Anyway, they have the same issue. So their issue goes back to around the 1960s when they started planting all of these trees in the city. And the decision at that time was to plant trees that wouldn't make a mess. So female trees, in order to reproduce, those trees produce fruits and seeds or large pods that will eventually fall to the ground. So the city planners in Atlanta thought, well, gosh, if we plant a lot of these trees, we're going to be spending a lot of time and money and human resources on the cleanup. Because it falls to the ground immediately. So at that time, they thought, well, let's just plant male trees. Let's plant the male species because they are, quote unquote, cleaner, because they don't drop anything to the ground, right? But they only produce pollen, so it's going to be a lot easier for us to keep a clean city. Well, it was unpredictable to them, but a pollen explosion happened. And the problem is an interesting one. So the male trees in Atlanta are producing and they call it botanical sexism, by the way, because they planted more male trees than female trees. So the male trees are producing all of this pollen, and there's no female trees to catch that pollen.
So it's just dust.
So it just turns into a pollutant that covers cars and the streets and everything, and they didn't see this problem coming. If they had planted an equal number of female trees compared to the number of male trees they were planting, the female trees would catch the pollen from the male trees. And this is something about science that I didn't even know before.
Yeah, that also reminds me of another study that I read that shared some similar timeline on some level. Is that I read a medical researcher from Switzerland. His name is Chesmim Actis. I probably pronounce his name wrong, but he did a study looking at the level of allergies in the Swiss Army. And he found out that in 1900, only 1% of the Swiss Army reported symptoms of allergy. And then that number climbed to 2% in the year 1960. But in the year 2020, the rate grew to 20%. And he wondered why we are seeing this jump from 1960 to 2020. And he found out that it's also the time phase when the market start to introduce the use of cleaning chemicals into our lives.
Oh.
And so he developed this theory called epithelial barrier theory, which basically focuses that our body have a first line of defense, which is our skin, the lining of our gut and airways, and they are the first barriers to protect us from pollutants like toxins and allergens. But when they are damaged or getting leaky because of the use of these chemicals in our daily life, that's when these harmful substances, the toxins, the allergens start to getting into our body and we start to develop symptoms like allergies and asthma.
So things that we created actually maybe even weakened our bodies or our immune systems.
Yeah, so you can see it's not only about the trees we planted, it's also about other things we're using in our lives.
Gosh.
Yeah, and he also found out that the rise of this kind of allergy is linked to the phase of industrialization and urbanization in many, many countries in the world, especially in developed ones.
I see why now people often say that the cleaner you seem to get, the easier you seem to get sick.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah. So Yushan and I don't suffer from these things. How about you, Fei Fei? Is it a tough time of year?
Not till now, but I
Really?
don't know in the future, so I'm
on
also
wood. Knock
putting
on
on
wood, quick.
glasses.
After I finished reading that story about Atlanta, Georgia, I thought, gosh, men are even causing problems in the tree community. Anywhere you find a man
So diversity.
or male species, there's always trouble to be found shortly after. You're listening to Roundtable. And by the way, if you are a person who suffers from allergies during this season, please do the best you can to cover up and take care of yourself. And summer's coming soon, I guess.